Hello and welcome to the second sustainability chat with friends. I'm here today with two RISD friends, so Diya and Katherine. I don't know how you want to go by on this call.
Okay.
And so could we please go around and kind of say where you are, what you do with your days, and what brought you to the chat?
So, my name is Diya. I am currently in Jaipur, and I've just been the past year hopping back and forth from Jaipur, India to New York. I'm kind of getting started with my own jewelry brand and educating myself on the way because it's not something I studied at RISD. And I'm excited to be here and kind of learn more about sustainability. I know a little bit about my industry, but just to learn more.
What is your industry? Or actually, intros first. Okay. I'm Katherine or Kat. I studied textiles at RISD and then was interested in sustainability in like the natural dyes way. I interned / was like a studio personal assistant to a natural dye artist in New York and Brooklyn. But then since we all graduated, I moved back to Hawaii. And so I've been here ever since. And I started working for my dad. And then now I'm working for a RISD grad, actually, who grew up here and then taught at RISD for a little bit. He's about like 10, 11 years older than us. And he has a small retail shop. And so his focus is really curating a shop that focuses on small businesses and how best to keep those alive, really, and like the good sustainability practices that they do as well. So it's a balance, but that's where I am right now.
Cool, that sounds really interesting. But yeah, please ask your question to Diya. What were you going to say? What industry is she working in?
So you're interested in jewelry, or that's what you're pursuing now, but it wasn't at RISD. What's your that you knew?
I mean, I studied film and animation at RISD, and then my family is in jewelry, and I was never interested in jewelry, but it seemed like the next best step in a way. So I've been more interested than I was last year.
Yeah. What kind of jewelry? Do they make themselves?
Yeah, so we have people who manufacture here, and they mostly do like they do some precious and semi-precious stones and both metals. And I'm trying to, start my own brand that's separate from them and do my own thing. And I want to incorporate sustainability, the practices, but it's really hard. When you're like at the ground level, it's like really hard because nobody encourages it.
Yeah. It's when that happens. What kind of do you get to choose the material? Like, could you choose recycled silver or recycled gold?
It's like when I was just beginning, I was like, that's what we have to focus on. And most of the feedback was like, you're so stupid. Everything here is recycled. But there's nobody's certifying it. Because since like it's like a like jewelry making hub, nobody there's no check. You can't figure out whether it is or isn't, and then the price goes up if you go through like fair trade, fair mind, and it's mostly discouraged in a way.
That's crazy. Oh
yeah.
So do you feel like fair trade is worth the price then?
I think it is, but also I am not I haven't started selling it. Like I'm doing the branding right now. So it goes back to if you can sell it, you can make it. But I haven't sold anything, so I can't justify it yet.
Yeah.
And what my parents work with is not it's not fair trade, fair mind, anything like that.
That's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? Because it's like, do you start selling it at the higher price point and then your user and your buyer just naturally adapts to that price point? Or do you start out lower and then raise the prices? Because then I don't know if people like that so much, but it is an interesting challenge because it's like you can't need the funding to be able to fund the fair trade, right?
Right, exactly. And then what kind of client are you attracting? Like people who wanna follow these practices versus like people who just wanna buy jewelry. I feel like so many people are not educated in this and they just don't know what to look for. Like even like gemstone cutting, like that causes like lung problems and when you're polishing and stuff, and nobody here wears masks. Even if you encourage it, nobody wants to wear masks, they don't care. Even like the workers, they don't care. So it's so hard.
That is crazy. That is really
Yeah.
crazy. It's hard because it's like from my like professional perspective, I'd be like, no, get like you need all the certifications, like get fair trade, get this, but it's hard. Like you're like just starting out on your own, it sounds like, pretty much, because your parents manufacture something different. I'm sure that they're helping you in some capacity, but yeah, it's a tricky one. I guess, what kind of education do you need? I wonder if you could kind of bring your buyer in on this journey and just kind of explain, like, look, I want to start buying from fair trade practices. I want to start getting certified recycled materials, all of this stuff. Like, what do you need to know about the process to like buy in on the journey or whatever, and then make that your storyline.
I think, yeah, that's
people really care about where you're coming from, and then if you believe in yourself, then they'll believe in you. But it totally, that takes time in itself, which takes money.
Yeah.
So, but how are you marketing it?
Well, right now my aim is to get my website on and then do it on Instagram and my website. And then maybe go to like, boutique stores and have my goods displayed there.
In New York or India?
In New York. I want to sell there. Even like putting my stuff in these stores on like a consignment basis, that requires capital. Because they don't buy it. And then just overall, like even if they are selling it, whether they follow sustainability practices, like for example, this is like off topic, but Sephora is going all sustainable, and so they want to convert like all of their brands to have those practices. And a lot of like the big luxury goods stores don't actually do that. So where's the customer going? What are they looking for? There are like a lot of questions that are not answered, and there's not like transparency in the industry.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if you could just survey your like target market, if you know what it is, or figure out what it is and then survey it from there.
Yeah.
Interesting approach. That's interesting to hear. I'm so far removed from like the makeup industry. Like I get so freaked out by all of the chemicals that are in the product. So I literally just like stopped buying conventional makeup like 3 years ago. But it's interesting to hear that Sephora is trying to push their other brands to be more sustainable. That's quite a good thing to do.
How does your family feel about your approach to jewelry making?
Again, like, so most of my family in Jaipur is actually in the jewelry industry, and it's funny when I started, so if you, because my jewelry is focused on stones, and you can like, there's so many terminologies used for stones that are not mine, taken from the earth, and people just don't know. Like if I'm gonna say synthetic, it could be glass doesn't fetch a good price. It could be lab grown, it could be anything. And how do you test it? Because they all look the same. It's really hard. And then over that, the price of the lab grown is so much lower than the real ones, that you can't pair that with like a precious metal. Like I can't pair like a fake ruby with like gold. Like putting those two together doesn't make sense, and your customer can figure out the price of those goods because of that. You can figure it out because it's much cheaper. Like you can fetch a price for a real stone as opposed to like a lab grown stone.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. Like I have not gotten any encouragement. And in the market, like if you go shopping and you're gonna go ask if you want like a lab grown stone, they want to be so away from it that they don't want to even answer your question. They want to be like, we never do that, because that sends people off. Like they lose customers by promoting it.
So you want to use lab grown or no?
No, I do, but there's like a lack of education in the way it's provided and the way it's sold that it's so hard to get into it.
Uh, well, little steps at a time. If you believe in it, then other people will totally get on board. But I feel like once I start to read and about a small business, and they're doing it very wholesomely, and they want to change the industry, and like it's more than just educating people on the practice, but it's also like the passion that you put into it, right? Like they want us to be a part of the pieces that they're getting, because then it's part of their lives too. And
Yeah.
I think just stick with it. But it would be interesting to try to be like this, the light, the sunshine, and the like good part of such an industry that like they don't care about themselves, really, about their health and everything, but I don't know, showing by example, I think, or leading by example is a really good method, I think. So yeah, keep at it.
It's an interesting challenge too.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a quick fix. It's
Yeah.
the social norm kind of thing, where if someone doesn't care, then why should you,
Yeah, it links back also to like behavior change and like gamification. There's this woman whose work I love. She's called Katie Patrick, and her career basically is dedicated to making people be more sustainable in whatever it is that they're doing. So she has all of these like bar graphs and like smiley face like drawings and scales and stuff to like get people engaged on the mission. So for instance, she took a map scan of a neighborhood, I don't know, somewhere in California probably, and she put all of these like empty circles on top of people's houses, and then people who got solar panels got like a happy face on it, and people who didn't just got it left blank, and it was public so everyone could see it. So then there was that like peer pressure. Oh my God, like, my neighbor has a solar panel, like I need to get a solar panel. Like I wonder if you could kind of do that with like health and safety. It's like, oh my God, they just got given whatever it is. Like it could even just be like a happy face incentive, nothing monetary, but maybe something monetary would work better. And then it's like, oh, if my neighbor who's working right next to me is wearing a mask and they get this incentive, can I wear a mask to get this incentive? Like I don't know.
That's interesting.
I love gamification. I think it's such an interesting take on making the world more sustainable.
I like the happy smile a lot. It's a social thing. But then my Andrew, my boss and the RISD grad, he and I were just talking about how, because he has a retail shop and there's a disaster on Maui that just happened with the fires. So, we want to raise as much money or like get people to want to give. And as a shop, a lot of other businesses were doing like 100% of the proceeds will go towards this foundation, or 50%, et cetera, or if you spend over this much, then this will go. But then that's like the incentive is more out of getting something for yourself, rather than just doing it out of the pure goodness of your heart. So then we are really struggling with how to do the best that we could for anything. And then just in general, that in like as a whole topic in itself, just having people do things just because it's good rather than getting something for themselves, right? So it's hard, but it's like baby steps.
Going off of Catherine's point, it's like a lot of it, like for example in India, if you ever want to donate, like we don't donate. It's because the organizations everybody thinks are fake and the money isn't going where it needs to go. And I feel like even if people want to do it, they don't do it because of that. I don't know if that's the case over there.
Yeah, well, that was part of the case for a moment. People at first were just donating to larger corporations, which helped, but then then there was talk about how one FEMA was like blocking it, and so and then another thing started, so then people stopped donating, but then they started donating straight to the families involved, so that was going directly to them. And then there were a lot of literally single people, or like 3 people, putting together a list of verified organizations and small businesses and people who are able to actually get money and stuff to the people in need. And like, I know them, you know, they come into the shop, and it's such a small community where everyone knows everyone, or at least like everyone knows the friend of everyone, right? So it's on a much smaller scale, but it was still happening where the question of giving was, how do we actually give so that it helps, rather than like everyone may jump to send a package of like a care package, but then if everyone does it, then the USPS system gets, like their mail system gets overwhelmed, and then nothing actually gets to people. So how do you do it like where it's actually doing what people want to do, you know? So that's tricky.
That is tricky. It's like trying to take a systems view when you can't necessarily see the whole system in place, right?
Yeah. And then once you start hearing things, you don't know if it's true or if you want to trust it or not. But as a whole, like for sustainability and like doing the right thing rather than just going with the norm, I think like consistency is super key, because right now too, I mean, with everything, no matter what topic or subject, consistency totally rules in a way, because people will jump on a trend, but then drop it. Like, what if the trend were consistency? You know, that would be cool. But yeah, as consistency, like in an urgent matter, people will rush to help, but then once it's not the topic of conversation anymore, then they'll forget about it and they'll remove themselves from it, and it's not their problem anymore, right? But like even a decade down the line, this is still going to be happening for the people it happened to,
right?
You know, so like if everyone or more people were to be consistent with their practices and really value small businesses and good practices, and not just revert back to buying something because it's easy or it's like cheaper, then I think people would really value what they have more. Like they'll value the rings that they have, it'll have more meaning, and then they won't just have such a quick turnover mind if it becomes more of that social norm. But if everyone just keeps like reverting back, then it's never going to happen, you know?
Yeah, totally. I think that's such a massive part of it too, and it's figuring out what your values are. And I think that your values can only really come about if you figure out what your definition of sustainability is, or what your definition of how you want to guide your life is, like lifestyle choices or whatever. Yeah, I think about that quite often, actually. That is a really, and that's also linking back to something you said, because I sent out like a form, obviously, and asked you guys like what kind of topics you wanted to discuss today. And you said something in your form, I can get it up, but it was something to do with the mindset of immortality and mortality of pieces. And then in brackets, you wrote, being okay with something organic not lasting forever, as well as seeing the value of higher prices for quality items that will last longer. And I think that kind of relates to what you're saying in terms of like the value mindset and valuing smaller businesses that maybe take more time to make beautiful things, but maybe that thing won't last forever because it's organic, or it will last forever because it's really high quality. But I just loved that sentiment.
Thanks. Yeah, it's on my mind all the time because as a retail shop, working at a retail shop, it's like I'm really happy that Andrew, this guy is who I'm working for, because he understands these topics and wants to do well for people. But it's hard because people are still like, they still don't want to spend a lot of money on certain things that they, I don't know, don't like. Who wants to spend $50 on a notebook kind of thing? Or I mean, not 50, but like a higher amount on a notebook that they might lose,
Right.
like, or they're so used to just throwing away. So it's still a business that he has to run, but also finding, or like figuring out, his business is quite new too. So he himself is figuring out what, even just getting people to know him and trust him, which he already is doing very well at because he's from here too. And so his family is well known and et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's actually quite fun to be in my position, with him, because it's literally just us two. And so coming from RISD, both of us, there's already, and then we also went to the same high school growing up,
Right.
literally the same schooling from kindergarten to college, which is nuts.
Yeah.
So there's already that trust level, and then the creative mind, and it's not just about money for him. And yeah, or like sourcing from international places too, who are doing these good practices. Yeah, it's part of the job. So I'm always wanting to converse about that. And it's like but as a retail shop owner, he does revert a little bit back to like, oh, but it's like people want this. I'm like, yeah, I like constantly have to challenge him to, but is that like, do you want to continue that practice or make people learn to like go that slower route, but ultimately it's better, like, do you want to, is that your brand where you want to encourage slower practices? And that's why people come to you, rather than kind of catering to the faster shopper.
Interesting.
Is
that kind of what he's doing at the moment? Then he's buying things that are more convenient because people like them, and then sacrificing on the sustainability of it? Or are they also sustainable but happen to be convenient?
Both.
Okay.
He really does focus on the brands themselves, like the good of the brand. And like, say for example, like clean deodorants, or clean makeup products, or we just got in a few like blanket throws that were made in Scotland, which I totally love because it's the textiles there is, the very high quality, the wool is, well sourced, and the water is all great and everything. But I don't know, some things are larger companies for sure. Like for example, we do really well with hair clips. It's like absolutely insane. But hair clips, they have like all these little parts that are fine, but are they the best? I don't know. But they're like cellulose acetate rather than plastics. So,
yeah, it's still that is like a whole other talk in itself.
Yeah,
like, is it actually better or not? Like,
exactly. So like it's like that kind of thing. But I would say like 80% of the shop is small business, well made and everything like that. It's just those fucking hair clips, like someone
Yeah.
will
It's tough. It's so tough. Like I recently had to get prescription glasses and I was like, what do I choose? And I ended up getting these like acetate ones because I was like, I literally have to buy something new. Like I can't thrift
yeah,
this. Like it's got to
right,
be tailored to my eyes. Like
yeah,
I ended up getting that, but even I really just don't think it's sustainable in itself, to be honest. But I think it's maybe better. I think it's one of those do better solutions, not do good solutions,
yeah.
which is frustrating. But
It's like at least it's a step better.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But
and
then,
just,
oh, sorry, go on.
I mean, just getting people more aware, I think, is a huge part of the shop too. And in general, especially I think here, we're just much slower than a lot of the world too. Or I guess not the world, but the US.
Yeah,
So, and we really care about our community, I think, at a different level. And so I don't know, it's a whole thing in so many aspects, like the agriculture and like Hawaii could be a fully self-sustaining ecosystem. Like we used to, I mean, like 100 years ago, but really that's not that much time. Everyone they fish our lands were plentiful with like things to feed everyone, you know, like we weren't getting Matson shipping containers from California and all over the world, which is putting oils into the ocean and everything, you know, like that whole thing. And so it's like being sustainable is a constant conversation here, which I really like.
yeah, that
I
is
think
awesome.
that's that no, I think that's like very fascinating because that's how like India, like in general, like the practices here are like that and they have been like that. And I mean I did the last 10 years of my schooling in America, but I've been like back and forth and I've like seen how they're like adopting to like American practices, American culture. The idea of use and throw is growing like constantly when you go out on the street. There are like new showrooms with like clothing being sold at cheap price points. And it's like insane how like I see my cousins and they just want to adopt the use and throw mentality more and more. And that hasn't been the case like for older generations. Like even today, like a clothing until it's like this small, like you rip it up into pieces and you use it as like a dusting cloth before it actually goes to trash. And then it's just changing over the generations and people are not following good practices anymore.
Yeah, like the practice of like for example fabrics. So Andrew is collaborating with a small company and they're using one of his prints that he makes, and they're it's like being made in India and they're doing this whole slow process, and they were talking about it with us, and they're just like, yeah, you know, we're really so over the fast industry and these practices are being forgotten. Like the young generation has no idea how to make anything anymore by their hands, and um it's a little sad, but I think I don't know. Yeah, I just keep going back to if more people adopt the mentality of like the process of making something rather than the fast mentality of it making money real quick, like how fast can it become profitable?
Mhm.
You know, I think here, okay, so for example, lei making here is a huge part of the culture where we be like, I'm constantly like, tomorrow morning I have to go pick a flower for a lei that we have to make tomorrow for a client. And the time that it takes to actually go and harvest the flowers or the greens, and you have to go to multiple places because not everywhere grows that type of flower, just based on if it rains or if it's dry, you know, things like that, the time of year. So all of those things are way more apparent here too. And then so once you pick, you have to like process it, like pick it apart or cut the stems, etc. Or you have to wait until like you get in the fridge and then it blooms more, etc., etc. And then the act of actually like making it is super tedious based on the flower and the construction and the type of lei and all of that. And I love it to death. Like it's such a slow practice. All I want right now is to like have a little home with a huge yard where I can like plant my trees and just make lei all day. I'm like, oh my God, what have I become?
It is so therapeutic though, doing like mundane tasks like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like people are so fast with their thinking now that they just want to turn everything over ASAP, and people are forgetting that if you're always looking for what's to come to like tomorrow, you're just never focused on what you're doing in the present and really fulfilling that, because once it's working so where it makes money on its own, then you don't even focus on it anymore, and you just focus on like, oh, an order comes in for 100 whatever's, then all you do is like you email your maker, they make it, it comes in, you unpack it, you repack it, and then ship it out, and it's like done. So yeah.
It's like that permaculture mentality, isn't it? If you tend for your garden to begin with and create a regenerative garden, the whole point in that is that you're supposed to get hammock time. Like you leave it, then it blooms on its own. And then you come back and you water it maybe occasionally if you have to, but theoretically it takes care of itself.
Yeah.
If you create a truly sustainable system.
Yeah, I think the practice of really caring for an individual piece rather than just having it manufactured in massive quantities could help. But then it always goes back to the valuing something that was literally made by someone's hands rather than having it be like an assembly line type of thing. But then that goes to show, or like that's another discussion where having an assembly line is more like, it could be like a small assembly line where you have your seamstress who does one job, and then you have the dyers who do another, and things like that. So that is a really nice practice. Oh, I know what I want to talk about. Like having these masters at their craft, I think is also another dying practice where they dedicate like their lives to learning and becoming masters at this, at their like what they do, instead of being good at like everything, where you kind of spread yourself thin, So yeah, that's another topic.
It's very, no, I mean, like for both the points that you said, like small assembly line, I remember when I came here last year, I was interested in garment, and I was very interested, and that's what I wanted to do, not even jewelry. And I was going around, and there were like these small places with like one person and like maybe like 5 other like people stitching and whatever, making garments, and I wanted to do like patchwork. And they said no. Most people said no. Most people are like, we're not going to do patchwork because it's labor intensive, it takes time, and if it breaks apart, then you're going to complain, your customers are going to complain, but it's more sustainable, and they just don't want to even touch it. Like they don't want to touch it. They're like, we can work with new fabrics, we can work with like these types of semi-recycled fabrics, but we're not going to do that. And going back to the point of like losing masters at their crafts, like even in the jewelry industry, like it's so hard now, especially Jaipur being like the hub where everything is made. People are choosing to like be like, you know, like what are they called? They're called autos here. I don't know what they're called. They're like small cabs. They'd rather be like drivers of small of cabs than
Yeah.
make jewelry, because they would earn more and it's less labor intensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's strange.
It's sad. But it like everything I think is connected where it's just getting faster and faster paced. And so people don't value craftsmanship. Or not, it's not that everyone doesn't, it's just like the majority that's like the money is where it's fast, you know.
Yeah,
So,
'cause more people can afford to buy it.
yeah.
That's another
And
issue.
so then these big companies just keep getting bigger because people are caring less and less, and it's becoming way more accessible, you know, cheaper things that you just toss. Like even the furniture business too. So where I work is like next door is a small furniture and like gallery place too. And then Andrew was majored in furniture, and he talks about how items now are just made to last like 3 years and then just toss and get a new one, like a new couch, you know, instead of having it reupholstered or fixed. They're just like, I'm like over it, and then just throw it away. It's like people are like, their mentality of shopping and what they bring into their lives is just so temporary. They don't shop for longevity anymore. You know?
Yeah, it's such a societal norm, isn't it? It's like, it's terrible.
I think they're not even like making goods that way. Like there's this random lady I was talking to, and she was like, microwaves used to have like screws in them, and like ovens used to have screws in them. And then America, like people just used to open it up and fix it. And so companies stopped doing that. So now things are glued in from the sides. You can't open it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a big,
that's wild.
Repairability.
Then you can't fix your own stuff anymore. You just have to get a new thing, you know?
Yeah.
Who wants to have someone come in and try to fix it for $1,000, right? Like maintenance of it is more expensive than just getting a new one.
I'm hoping that will change in the next few years, so as the circular economy gets more momentum.
Yeah,
like repairability is one of the key like points to the circular economy, because you preserve the value of the material for longer when you repair it instead of recycling, because recycling is like the worst case scenario in the circular economy. So it's like doing everything that you can do before it gets to that point. So I'm hoping in the next few years the economy will change that, hopefully. But who knows? Like I noticed also when I lived in the States that convenience really is a killer. Like the amount of waste associated with a convenient option is insane, from like the physical waste, but then also maybe the less tangible waste, like the transportation. You know, like if you get a delivery driver to come and like deliver you your groceries every day, then you have those emissions from his car journey instead of you just walking down the street to go buy like whatever it is you need. And then the plastic bags, that you can take your own reusable bags instead of it getting delivered in plastic bags, like all of this stuff.
Absolutely. Like every aspect of life here, the convenient part of it is just ultimately it's not going to be convenient. You're gonna have to deal with that. You know, like it may be convenient right now, but then the consequences from that is going to be so much greater, you know?
Totally.
I
We
think
live in an interlinked, interconnected system. It's gonna come back. There is no way. You can't throw anything away. It doesn't exist.
No, yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I always think about that, where I'm like, I need this, but I don't want to buy it because I'm gonna have to throw it away. Like, and then I don't want to keep reusing this bottle because I'm just gonna end up with like a million bottles of this, and so like I like, yeah, it's such a struggle too. But I think even the little bit of doing better and better each time you shop or you just think about your footprint, then it's like the greater number will help towards the whole rather than feeling like you have to do everything,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
What, in terms of your like personal sustainability actions?
If everyone did at least one or two things every day, like the little bit every day will add up.
Yeah.
But if you feel like it's all or nothing, then no one will do it.
Yeah. That is.
So like it'll get a little bit easier and easier every day if you do it. If you don't, then it'll just crumble.
Yeah, it's like using convenience as a tool. Like make it convenient to do a few good actions every day, and then hopefully people are like, oh, actually that wasn't so bad.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Let's do some more things.
Yeah, like re-adopting better habits. It's all habit, really.
Yeah, it's completely related to behavior change. Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Diya?
Yeah.
It's okay. No, I was gonna say two things. I was gonna say I think it's also like boredom. Like even if we just talk about shopping, like I get bored of my clothes, but I don't want to buy new clothes. I stopped shopping a while ago, and I just don't know what to do with them. So then I hide them, and then bring them out again after a while. I mean that's the only way. How are you gonna like? I don't know. I want to. I don't know. And then like, the other thing is like I feel the world is like shrinking, and everybody needs visibility and fame, and that's not sustainable. Like if I'm gonna go, like as you said, like go do my own groceries. If I want visibility, I feel like I want to spend that time doing something that's gonna bring me visibility, and then not adopt the more sustainable habits that one should naturally be having. I don't know.
Oh, do you find that the two kind of butt heads?
I find that they might, because one is fast and one is slow, and slow living doesn't come with visibility.
Really? Do you find? Huh.
I don't know.
Sorry, I don't know where to go with that. I'm just surprised, that's all.
I would say it totally depends on where you're living and what people value, yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. That's also got me. Now you're trying to make me think of kind of influencers, I guess, who are sustainable. I'm like, no, they have. There are definitely some people that I follow.
It's totally influencers. Like, if you think about influencers, they just do stuff to be able to show people like their lives. And if they don't have anything going on, or if they don't value slowing down, then they're just always going to fill their days with something, whether it be like going across town to a popular matcha shop, and then getting a matcha with another influencer friend who came from the other side of town. And so like that, their movements, like they're going in taxis and then getting 2 cups, like that's happening at all hours of the day, especially in these big cities, right? Where and yeah. So I feel like visibility and like influence and just the media, like digital, it's so everyone wants to be someone.
Yeah.
And like get that affirmation from the quantity over the quality of people. Right?
Yeah.
Like you have no idea who a million followers are, right? And like Yeah, that's so interesting.
It goes back to ego, doesn't it? I think about that I did think about that quite a lot, especially during COVID, like how your
Yeah.
ego like rules everything. But I think that if you can disassociate from your ego and kind of get grounded within yourself, then you're more able to identify what your values are, and then you're more able to change your actions to have a more sustainable way of life if that's what your values truly are, which I would hope after meditating quite deeply you would come to the realization that sustainability should be a part of your values. But I don't know, for each their own. But yeah, it is an odd one. I think it can also be used as a tool though. Like if we could figure out how to harness influencers and celebrities and everything to make deconsumption a trend,
Yeah,
would be pretty beneficial.
totally. And making it more important to focus on what's really happening and the real rather than pretending. I think a lot of influencers just feel even the social pressure to have something going on in their lives. Because otherwise, who cares? Like that's a huge part. Like one of my best friends, she is an influencer, but it's totally eating at her in like a unknown way, or she and I talk, and I brought it up quite a few times where she was actually like, oh, you're so right, I never really even thought about it, like the very first time that we talked about it, because it was so part of her life, and like subconsciously she was feeling like she needed the affirmation, which stemmed to like the family things, and I don't know, it just became such a norm for her, and she didn't know what to do with her life, or with her days without acknowledging or having people acknowledge what she's doing, like just based on likes and comments and everything. Yeah. And like also trying to kind of put up a wall and like not having people come into their life and know what's really going on, like this again with the ego thing and like shame or the social like not accepting unhappy behavior or feelings and emotions, right? Like everyone has to be happy all the time, or something has to be going on, but it can't be sad or just relaxing, like if you're relaxing you have to be in a hammock in Hawaii, right? Like that kind of thing.
It is crazy that our society is geared up like that. It makes no sense. Like when you break it down like that, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I think it would be powerful. You mentioned earlier also like Andrew isn't driven by money. I think that is quite a powerful thing, because then you can use money as a tool. And I think similarly for influencers, like if they can figure out how to use businesses as a vessel for change, then that could be tremendously beneficial. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about all of these businesses, but really, unless we get people to stop consuming so much, and unless we get all of the businesses to be more sustainable, it's not going to have a positive impact on the planet, which we actually desperately need. Like many of the planetary boundaries have been exceeded, and we do actually need like action happening like today from everyone to be more sustainable.
Totally.
Societal good. So it's like, how do we get that societal shift to happen? Like, can all of the influencers just start talking about one of the 9 planetary boundaries? Like pick one that you like go from there.
Yeah, for sure, I agree. Yeah, it's a struggle. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's a struggle because like he doesn't want his shop and his reason to be about money, because it's not, but it's such a huge factor in having a shop, right? In order to keep going, like he has to stay afloat, otherwise he can't continue what he's doing, and then the big stores just keep winning, right? So go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, I wish like everybody had this mandatory way of like donating or doing something good. Like it's like necessary, like you have to do
Like
it. Like
taxes.
sorry?
Like taxes.
Like taxes, yeah, it should be like a tax. Like you put this money
Right.
aside and it's gonna go somewhere. You choose like where it's gonna go. That's it. That's how it's gonna be. And
Totally.
yeah, I don't know. I forgot my point, but that's all.
I have one point linked back to something you said earlier, Diya, and then I think maybe we should wrap up because I've taken so much of your time. But you were saying how lab-grown rubies, for instance, are cheaper than real rubies. But all of the environmental benefits that I heard about lab-grown is that there's a massive reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. You obviously don't have the labor, the possible like poor labor management and treatment of people who work in like extracting ruby,
Mining.
that stuff,
Yeah.
mining, yeah, exactly. And if it costs less, then it's kind of crazy to me that, because so often the argument is that sustainability is more expensive, but if you have these potentially more sustainable materials that are cheaper, like that's such a great selling point. It's crazy to me that people can't see that that's a massive selling point.
It's like from a brand perspective, it's like you can't pair that with something that's precious. And then from a consumer perspective, it is not, it's if you're gonna wear fine jewelry, like it
Must
needs
be
to
the
be fine
real deal.
jewelry, you know, it's not, unless you follow that being sustainable footsteps, then other people, they just don't care, you know, people just don't care.
That's crazy.
Which goes back to ego, because they're putting themselves and like, I have a real diamond, over it's diamond, like it doesn't mean that I don't love the person any less, kind of thing,
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, do you guys have anything else you'd like to say before potentially wrapping up?
Thank you so much for hosting this. This was great. I like had no idea what was gonna happen, but this is really great, Lizzie. Thank you.
It was
Had
so
a lot of
awesome.
fun.
Thank you so much for chatting. Like, it was such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah. And are you gonna continue doing these?
I hope so, yeah. It's just finding people to chat.
Yeah. So keep doing it, because I feel like just talking about it really gets it back in our minds, like at the forefront, rather than like, yeah, it's it's important, but like
Yeah.
bringing forth the importance of it is a start.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to like raise awareness and make it seem more accessible, because I think so many people are like, what is sustainability? Like, how do you talk about that?
Yeah.
I guess bringing it back to everyone's forefront of mind.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to do another one, let me know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. You too. Well, have a lovely night. I think it's night
Yeah,
time.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Well, good night. Thank you so much for staying up late to chat to us.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.